Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're going to build this AI image generator app with Python. Now this UI will be built using Tkinter and the image generation will occur using the OpenAI DALL-E2 API. So the way this app works is you're going to type in a prompt. So in this case I'm going to say cat wearing cap, and then you can select the styles. So you have realistic, cartoon, 3D illustration and flat art. So if you go with realistic, and then you can set the number of images. So this is going to be anywhere between 1 and 10 images. I'm going to opt for 3 images, and now I'm going to press on generate. As you can see, we have 3 images that were generated. As you can see, there's a slideshow showing us all 3 images of a cat wearing a cap. This is based on our prompt, based on the style that we set, and based on the number of images. So here we have 3 different images. So this video is totally beginner friendly, even if you've never used the OpenAI API or even if you've never built a UI using Tkinter, you can follow along with this video. The source code will be in the description, and without further ado, let's get started. The first thing you need to do is to navigate to platform.openai.com, so just like you see on the screen right now, and create an account. This is what will enable you to use the OpenAI APIs using this platform. After creating an account, you're going to head over to platform.openai.com/account/API keys and generate your own API key. Next, you're going to add this API key as an environment variable on your machine. So if you're using Windows, you need to just navigate to System Properties, Advanced, press on Environment Variables, and create a new variable titled OpenAI API Key, just like you can see on the screen right now. Save this, and now you have your key as an environment variable. We do this for security reasons. We don't want to copy our key right into our Python code. This would not be secure. We don't want it to appear in the code. Rather, we want to save it as an environment variable. Now, we have everything we need. We can head back over to VS Code and start coding. So here I have this generate_image.py file. What I'm going to demo now is how you can actually retrieve an image from this API using Python. So for now, we're not going to worry about the UI. We're not going to worry about Tkinter, making a desktop app, all those things. We're just going to keep them aside. For now, we just want to see how this API would work. First things first, you need to import OS and import OpenAI. This is the library that will enable you to talk to this OpenAI API. To install it, you simply need to take this pip install OpenAI and run it in your terminal. So you head back here to your terminal, run pip install OpenAI. So I already have it, but in your case, just install it, wait a minute, and it should be installed. After you have imported both OS and OpenAI, you're going to want to retrieve your key from the environment variables. So earlier, we saved this key as an environment variable. So here you're going to want to retrieve it. You do that using os.getEnv, and then you get the value of the environment variable. If you saved it as anything else, you're going to have to write the name of the environment variable here. If you do not even want to bother with environment variables, you can just copy paste your API key here as a Python string. However, I don't recommend it. It's not one of the best security practices, and this will leave your key exposed within your code. So now we have our key, we save it in OpenAI.API key. Now we can start by talking to the API. First things first, I'm going to write the prompt. So the prompt is going to be what I ask this API to generate. So I'm going to say cat wearing red cape. Now I have the prompt. All I need to do is to request it from the API. I just create a response object. This is where the response of this request will be stored. And to request it, I use the image endpoint. This is what will enable me to talk to the DALL-E2 API. So here I say OpenAI.image.create, and I need to specify 3 things. The first one is the prompt. So what kind of image do you want? In this case, we want an image of a cat wearing a red cape. The second thing is n. This refers to the number of images that we're going to generate. You may want to generate 5, 10, 13 images, whatever you want. In our case, we generated 3 in the demo at the start of the video. For now, for this example, let's just generate 1 just to see how this API would actually work. Next, you need to specify the size of the image. This is going to be the size or the resolution or the number of pixels that your image is made of. So in this case, let's just say 1024 by 1024. Now you can specify anything smaller or bigger. It's all up to you in this case. For this example, let's just go with this. Now we have our image. The response of this API is stored inside this response variable. How do I actually get the image? So I say response sub data. So this is going to get me the data from my response. Then I say sub 0. Now, the reason I say sub-0 is here, because you can actually request more than one image, you can use this index here to refer to which image you want. So let's say I have 5 images, and I say sub-0, this is going to be the first image. If I say sub-1, this is the second image. Sub-2, this is the third image. Everything in Python is indexed starting by 0. So 0 means get me the first image. In this case, we only have 1 anyways, so we use this 0 to get the first image. After you have the reference of this image, you're going to want to get the URL of this image. All you need to do is say sub URL. This will retrieve the URL of this image that was returned by this API. And that's it. So all you need to do after getting this is to simply print out the image URL. Let's go ahead and test this out. So I'm going to run this generateimage.py file. As you can see, a URL was returned. So what you need to do is to simply just copy the link. Now this image is totally AI generated. Okay, now that we know how to actually use the OpenAI API, let's head over and start building our user interface, which will enable us to interact with this API. So we're going to build this using Tkinter and a library called Customtkinter. Customtkinter is a library built on top of Tkinter that allows you to build more modern looking interfaces. To install it, you just need to run in your terminal pip install Customtkinter, and as you can see right here, I have imported both of them. If you're not familiar with Tkinter, no worries, I'm going to walk you through this step by step in order to build this UI. First, we're going to start by entering our starter code. This is what will enable us to create a Tkinter application. We say the root is equal to ctk.ctk. This is going to be the root widget in Tkinter, or your actual window. In Tkinter, widgets are actually formed in a hierarchy. They are nested within each other. This means that you have a large window. This is going to be the root widget. And then everything else, your buttons, labels, entries, drop-downs, things like that, will be inside of it. They will be nested. Now, of course, we set the title of our window. This is going to be AI image generator. And then you have root.mainLoop. This is going to be the infinite loop or the event loop of our application. This is a loop that will keep on running so long as your application is being executed. Now, if I run this to show you what we have, as you can see, we have this very basic window. Now, this is in dark mode. This is simply because my system is actually in dark mode. So Customtkinter by default, it takes the mode of your system. So if your system or your machine is in light mode, this is going to be in light mode. We can set it manually. I'll show you how in just a second. But basically, this is our window. Now, if you expand it, you can see that the title is AI image generator, just how we told it to be. All right, now let's actually close this. So let's actually set the theme. You just say ctk.setAppearanceMode dark if you want dark mode, light if you want light mode. By default, this will follow your system. Let's start by building our interface. Let's just take a look at our reference interface. This is how our application is going to look like at the end. Here we have this entry where the user can write their prompt. We have a drop-down where the user can select the style of the image. We have a slider where the user can select the number of images possible, a button to generate the image, and here we have something called a canvas, which is going to store our image slideshow. Let's first start by building the left side of the interface. Now, first thing is we're going to create a frame. We're going to call this the input frame. This lighter shade of gray that you see right here, this is a frame. It's another widget that is nested inside of our root widget that will contain other widgets as well. We do this for aesthetic reasons and also for grouping, positioning, layouts, things like that. This is what's going to enable our interface to look like this. So this is going to be a frame. We choose to name it input frame, and to create it, you just say ctk.ctk_frame. You pass root as the parent. As I said before, in Tkinter, widgets are nested. So every widget except the root widget has a parent. So this frame is inside root, so its parent is root. This is going to be the parent widget of the frame. All right, we have created the frame. However, we cannot see it in our application until we do something like pack, place, or grid. This is what we call geometry managers in Tkinter. They help us position our different widgets on the screen. I'm not going to go into too much depth about this in this video. So for now, we use pack. The reason is pack helps our UI remain responsive and look good. It's going to expand everything based on what we tell it. So we say expand is equal to true. We give it some padding on the X and the Y axis. This is going to give it this spacing that you see right here. So let me just get the red pen. So here, this is a padding, and then this part here, this is a padding as well. And now we have actually created our frame. let's start populating our frame with these different input widgets. First things first, we're going to create a prompt label. This is this label that you see right here. Label is just some text on the screen. That's basically all there is to it. In this case, this one should say prompt. And to create it, you just say ctk.ctk label. You specify the parent. In this case, this is input frame. And then you specify the text. So here the text says prompt. You can specify anything that you want. Now, if we run this, as you can see, we have our frame, the one that we created. There is some padding. You can see here, this is the padding along the x-axis. This is the padding along the y-axis. But there is no label. We can't see the prompt. The reason is in Tkinter, as I said, you can't see things unless you do two things. First, you create the widget like here, like we just did. Second, you need to use pack, place, or grid to actually place it in your screen. So we're going to use grid in this case, and I'll show you how in just a second. But basically, after you use grid, you run this, and now you can actually see the prompt label. Now, what does this grid, how does this work? Basically, let's actually erase this. This is going to be a grid like this, like a table. And now it's going to have different columns and different rows. So this here is going to be column 0, and this is going to be column 1. And now this is going to be row 0, row 1, and row 2. This is how a grid works in Tkinter. They are indexed using the row number and the column number. And of course, because this is Python, everything starts with 0. So prompt in this case, it should be in row 0, column 0. And this is why we specify here row equals 0, column equals 0. And I also give it some padding. So padding is going to be the spacing between this and the rest of the widget, the rest of the frame. Now, the next thing we want to create is this entry or the text box that you see right here. To create this, we just say prompt underscore entry is equal to ctk.ctk text box. So this is going to create this text box. This will be inside the input frame, and we specify the height to be 10. Now here, things like padding, the height, things like that, these are really all based on trial and error, or things that by practicing a lot, now I know what looks good on my machine. Now you can change these to your liking, you can change the padding. With practice, you will know what kind of padding works the best. So really, it's all about trial and error at the start. And then once you know how the padding looks like, usually, you can do this off the top of your head and specify these numbers. You can just follow along with my numbers for now. If you want to make any changes in your case, just change these numbers, space things out more or less. It's all up to you. At the end of the day, this is a design choice. Alright, so I've created the text box. Next, I need to add it to the grid. In this case, this will be row 0, column 1. I specify some padding again. And now if I run it, let's see, this is how it looks like. So we have our frame, this gray frame right here. We have the prompt and we have the text box, so you can just type stuff here, anything that you want. This is where the user will write their prompt. Now the next thing we want to create is this label for style and the drop-down menu. You create the style label. Again, it will be inside the input frame and the text should say style. Next, you add it to your grid. So you just say row equal 1, column equal 0, specify the padding again. Now, we've added the label, we need to add the dropdown. So the style dropdown is going to equal something called CTK combo box. Of course, it will be inside input frame, and then the values is going to be what values are available in this combo box. So we're going to specify realistic, cartoon, 3D illustration, flat art. There are plenty of styles. You can just search and you can find a million styles that you can use with this OpenAI API. We're going to go with these. They're pretty basic, straightforward, and there's only 4 of them, but you can add as many as you want. Now, after creating the combo box, the next thing is we're going to use grid. Let's run it. And as you can see, this is how our interface looks like right now. You have the prompt, you can type stuff, and then you can select the style that you want based on this dropdown. Next, we want to create this label here for the number of images, as well as the slider, which will help us select the number of images that we want. To create it, the label is the same thing. You just say ctk.label, you specify the text, and then of course you add it to the grid. In this case, this is row 2 and column 0. Now after that, we're going to create the slider. This will be ctk slider. Of course, the parent is input frame. Next, we have to say from to. So this is going to be the range of the slider. Now in my case, to limit it, I set it from 1 image to 10 images at a maximum. If you want to generate more images, if you want to generate 20, 30, it's all up to you. You can just change your to right here. Next, I change the number of steps to be equal to 9. This is going to give us the options of 1, 2, 3, 4 until 10. Now we add it to the grid. Of course, we just say the row is equal to 2, column is equal to 1. Let's run it and see how it looks like. And as you can see, this is our interface. Next, we want to create this button right here. So this is going to be the generate button. As you can see, it actually spans 2 different columns. It's in both column 0 and column 1. To do this using the code, let's first create the button. So you say CTK button, you specify the parent, this is input frame, and then the text is equal to generate. Now, to actually grid it, we say row 3, column 0, and then we say column span equal to. Now this column span equal to, what it does is it tells this button you have to span 2 different columns. So it will start at row 0 and then it will span the 2 different columns as you can see right here. Now we have the column span. You say sticky equal news. What this means is north, east, west, south. So you want it to be expanded in all directions. This is what's going to make our button this wide. It's going to make it expanded. And of course, we specify some padding, in this case 10 and 10. Let's run it and see how it looks like now. And as you can see, our button has been created. The last thing we want to add to our interface is going to be the canvas right here. So the canvas is where we're going to set our images once they are generated. Now, to do this, you just say canvas is equal to tkinter.canvas. So this does not exist in the CTK library. So this is why we import Tkinter as well, not just the custom Tkinter. So you say canvas. The parent is root. So here it's not inside the input frame. This is inside the root widget or the window. So as you can see, this is the frame. It has all the inputs, but this is inside root. It's not inside the frame. Now, after creating it, you also specify the width and the height. So I chose these. Again, this is trial and error. You can set this to whatever you want, but I'm going to go with this size. Now, of course, we add it. We use pack this time. So why do I use pack and not grid? This is because the grid is actually just inside the input frame. However, inside root, we were using pack. So we were using pack for the frame and for the canvas as well. And I say side equal left. So let's run it now and see what we have. And finally, this is our interface. So we recreated the entire interface using Tkinter and Customtkinter, and this is what it looks like. Of course, if we press on generate, nothing happens. For now, there is nothing here, no images are generated. To actually add code to your button, you're going to come here where we created the button, and after the text, you're going to specify command equal generate. So what command does is that when this button is clicked, when you click on the button, go ahead and execute the generate function using Python. Now this function doesn't exist. We're actually going to create it ourselves. So we say def generate. And this is going to be a function we created. So what this means, like let's say if I print hi here, what this means is that when this button is clicked, go ahead and execute this generate function. Let's run it and let me show you how this works. I press on generate. If you come here to your output, you can see that hi was actually printed out. So when the button is clicked, generate is called, we go ahead and execute the content inside this generate function. Of course, we're not going to print hi, this is just for the sake of example. Here is where we're going to generate our OpenAI image. Now let's actually copy the code from here since we already prepared it. We're just going to get the OpenAI API key. Now the user prompt, we're just going to modify this later. We're going to get these, take them here and copy them inside this generate function. I'm just going to add a tab. And of course, we need to import OpenAI and OS. So I'm just going to say import OS and import OpenAI. All right, so now what are we doing? We're getting the environment variable. All right, this is standard. We already talked about this. And then we're actually getting the user prompt cat wearing red cape. So for now, we're not getting the prompt from the actual Tkinter interface that we built. We'll change this in just a second. Then we're doing the request, getting the image URL, and finally we are printing it. The user prompt should not be cat wearing red cape. This should be our actual user prompt. So we want to get the prompt from the entry that we have in Tkinter. So from this entry right here. To do that, we simply say prompt underscore entry.get. We say 0.0 until Tkinter.end. What this means is start at the very start of the entry. This is going to be row 0, column 0, because the text box actually in custom Tkinter, this one, has rows and columns as well. So we're going to start at row 0, column 0 until the very end. This means we want the entire prompt from this entry. This is going to be the prompt that the user typed in before pressing on generate. After getting the prompt, we also want to get the style. So here you say user underscore prompt plus in style, and then we say style dropdown dot get. So what this means is that if our prompt is going to be cat wearing a hat, it will append to it in the style realistic or in the style 3D cartoon or whatever we chose. Now to place this inside the canvas, the first thing we're going to add some imports. I'm going to use the pillow library to import image and image TK. So image will create an image object, and image TK will allow us to use images in the Tkinter canvas. We'll see how as we write the code. After that, I'm going to import requests and IO. I'm going to use these to actually get the image from the URL that OpenAI provides us. So here I have the image URL. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to actually retrieve the image from this URL. So to do that, we say response equal requests dot get. So this is going to get us the image from this URL. After getting the response, we want to open it. This is where we use IO. We use bytes IO to read the bytes of this image, and then we open it using image.open. Now we have an image object. We want to actually create a Tkinter image to put in the canvas. So to do that, you say image tk.photoimage and you pass image inside of it as well. Finally, you need to actually place this in your canvas. Here you need two steps. You specify canvas.image equal image, as you can see right here, and also you say canvas.createImage at coordinates 0, 0. I'll show you how when we do it. You have to anchor it somewhere, so we say northwest, and then image equal image. So I'll show you how this will look. Let's run it and test it out. So I'm going to write my prompt. This is going to be dog wearing a cap, and then I'm going to set the style. So I'm just going to say cartoon. Well, let's actually say flat art. And here, although I have this slider, we're actually not retrieving the contents, so we can set this to be 1, but we're not changing this for now. For now, we specify that we only want one image because we haven't written the code to actually get a slideshow in our canvas. So let's actually press on generate. This should give us one image that should appear in the canvas. So as you can see here, you can kind of see the edges of an image of a dog wearing a cap. Now the reason this image didn't fit in the canvas is because the size of the image, that was a mistake on my end, is 1024 by 1024. So this should have been 512 by 512. So I'm just going to test this again. So the reason is the canvas height and width. You can see here 512 by 512. This is the size of the canvas. So I need to set the size of the image to be the exact same. So I'm going to stop and rerun this. So I'm just going to open it again. Right, dog wearing cap, not wearing cat, cap, and then specify flat art. Of course, this, as I said before, this is only going to give us one image because the slider isn't working yet in our code. We press on the generate button, and as you can see, we have some flat art of a dog wearing a cap. So as I said, here we're not actually using the slider. We have specified in our code that we only want one image. Now to change it, all we need to do is simply remove this one right here, and we're going to get the number slider.get. This will give us the number, and we just have to convert it to an integer. So now we can actually generate more than one image. But how are we actually going to change this in our canvas right here to use multiple images and to create a slideshow? Now I'm just going to clear this code. Let's start by clearing this because we're going to have more than one image URL, so this is not needed. So rather than one image URL, we're going to have many. So I'm going to create a list called image URLs. It's going to be an empty Python list, and here we're going to have many different URLs. Next, I'm actually going to loop over my data. So here response actually gives me the data. So before we were saying response sub data sub 0. So we say response sub data. So this is going to get me the data returned by this API request. And then the length of it will be equal to the number of images returned. So this is going to be 4 if we requested 4 images. This is going to be 5 if we requested 5 images. So this is going to be the number of images that we have, and I loop over it using for I in range. All right, so I'm looping over the data of all our images. What I need to do is to get the URLs and append them to this list. So I get the URL like this. I say response sub data, sub I, sub URL. Now before we were doing the same thing, but here instead of I we had 0, and with 0 we were getting the very first image. Now we say sub I because this could be 0, 1, 2, 3 depending on which image this is. And of course we are getting the URL each time, and I'm appending it to my image underscore URLs. So now this is going to be a list of all my URLs. I can show you how this will look if we print image URLs. So let's actually run this. So let's type in a prompt. Let's say dog wearing cap again. So here we're not actually going to bother. I'm going to go for 3 images and I'm going to press on generate. If you go here to your output, you can see we have a list here that was printed, and this list contains 3 different URLs for 3 different images. You can even open them and check them out. They're going to be 3 unique images of a dog wearing a cap in the illustration style that we set. So as you can see, this list contains the URLs of all our images. So what we did before is we got the URL of the image, then we created an image object using pillow, then we created an image TK object and we placed it inside our canvas. So we were following those 4 steps. So now we just got the URLs. Next thing, we need to create an image object and we need to get this from the URL. So to do that, I'm going to create an images list. This is going to be a list of images. So before we created 1 image, now we're going to create multiple, and all of them will be inside this Python list. To create them, again, we loop over each URL in image URLs. So in this list, in this case, it had 3. We're going to loop over them. And then for each URL, I'm going to say response equal request.getURL. So I'm going to get this image from this URL. I'm going to use IO to actually get the contents. So I say response.content. So we did this before. It's the same thing. And I say image.open. And each time we loop, we are going to use a different image. Now, after that, I'm going to say photo image. So this is going to be the image TK. So this is going to be the Tkinter image that we will place in our canvas. So this is step 3. Photo image, and then we pass image inside of it. After doing that, we need to actually add it to the canvas. But for now, we're not going to do this. We're just going to insert this into the images list. Now we have a list of images. We're going to take our list of images and perform step 4, which is going to be to add them to our canvas. And of course, we're also going to create a slideshow. To add them to our canvas, we're going to create an internal function called def_update_image. So this function, it will create the slideshow, which is going to periodically update our images in our slideshow. We start with a default index of 0, which means you have to start with the first image. All right, so this function, first thing we need to specify canvas.image. It's going to be images sub index. So if this is images sub 0, this is going to be the first images. Images sub 1, this is going to be the second image. Now, after this, we have to say canvas.createImage. So this is the same thing that I did before. I anchor this in the top left corner, so northwest, and I start by coordinates 0, 0. And of course, the image I pass is images sub index. So this is going to be the image that we're currently working with. All right, so this should actually add it to our canvas. The next thing is we need to loop over them. We need to see them in a slideshow. To do that, we need to update this index. So one thing you can tell me is maybe we can increment the index. So we can say here index plus equal 1. So this is going to go from index 0 to index 1 and so on. Now, the problem is this will not repeat. So at one point you're going to reach, let's say you have 5 images. It's going to go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's going to continue, but these images don't exist. So we actually need to loop back. And to do this, you just say index equal index plus 1 remainder length of the images. So what this means is you're going to increment this by 1, but then you're also going to get the remainder or the modulo operator based on the length of the images. So for example, this is going to go from 0, 1, 2, let's say we have 3 images. So then it's going to hit 3, and this will be 3 remainder 3, which is going to give you back to 0. And this is going to repeat the first image again. So this allows us to loop over the images in a circular way to actually see all of them continuously in our slideshow. The next step is to actually call the update image function again, and we do that using canvas.after. So I say after 3000 milliseconds, so after 3 seconds, call the update image again, and then with the new updated index. So in this case, we start with 0, the next time it will be 1. So this is kind of a recursive way that we're calling this update image function. Now, of course, we have to call this function for the first time, so we do that outside of the function. This is where we call it for the very first time. Now this slideshow thing, it might be a little tricky because this is recursion, and this is a kind of difficult concept for many people. But the way you need to think about this is, we have this update image function, we call it the first time with index equals 0. Next time we add the index, so we increment the index by 1, so it's going to be index 1. We're going to call the update image again. Then the index will be 2, and we call the update image again, and so on for as many images as we want. Alright, so now here I have the update image function. Let's finally run our code and test everything out. So I'm going to write dog wearing suit and tie, and I'm going to go with 3D illustration, and then I'm going to say, let's say 3 images, and I'm going to press on generate. So this should create a slideshow for me. So this is the first one. It's a 3D illustration of a dog with a suit. This is the second one, and this is the third one. So these are very interesting illustrations, and as you can see, the slideshow is looping over the same 3 images. Alright, so that is it for this video. In this video, we built this AI image generator. We were able to get the prompt, the style, and the number of images from a user interface built using Tkinter. We're able to generate them and then create a slideshow using our canvas, just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Please do leave a like if you enjoyed. Let me know if you are using this kind of interface, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.